What if I told you the key to understanding one of the world's most complex books wasn't some ancient secret code, but a simple picture? Today, we're digging into a framework that uses the idea of a single wall to try and make sense of the entire Bible.
I mean, think about it for a second. When you open up the Bible, how do you know which parts are actually for you, right now, versus what was written to someone else thousands of years ago? It's a huge question for any reader, and honestly, it can get pretty confusing.
Well, a book called The Barrier Wall argues that the answer isn't some complicated formula. Instead, it's a powerful metaphor that's already sitting right there inside the scriptures.
Okay, let's get into it. This entire framework, this whole idea, is built around a literal divine wall. So, you gotta ask, what exactly is this wall?
The authors call it the middle wall of partition, and their argument goes like this. When God called Abraham way back when, he put up this barrier, this fence, this blockage, and it created this huge split in how he dealt with humanity. You had Israel on one side, and then everyone else, what the Bible calls the Gentiles, or the nations, on the other.
And look, this isn't something they just made up. They pull this entire metaphor from just one verse in the book of Ephesians. It talks about a middle wall of partition being broken down. That one little phrase, for them, it becomes the key to everything.
So here's the bottom line. The book says every time you read a passage of Scripture, you need to ask one simple question. In this story, at this moment in time, is that barrier wall up or is it down? The answer to that question, they claim, changes absolutely everything.
All right, so let's start with the first phase. We're going to look at the long stretch of history when, according to this view, that wall was standing tall and strong.
So you can see here a timeline that they base on their reading of Ephesians chapter 2. It breaks everything into three big chunks. First, you've got time past. This is when the wall is up. And we're talking about a massive period of time here, the entire Old Testament, the Gospels, the book of Acts, and even Paul's early letters. Then you hit the now. This is a unique period where the wall is down. A secret, they say, is only revealed in Ephesians and Colossians. And finally, there are the ages to come, where, and get this, they argue the wall actually goes back up. We're going to focus on the first two phases for now, but that third one is a really big piece of their overall argument.
Now, this next point is a really big deal. See, a lot of theologians view the book of Acts as a time of transition, where God was kind of changing how he did things midway through. But this framework argues the complete opposite. It says that the wall and all the rules that came with it stood strong from the very beginning of Acts right to the very end.
And to back this up, they highlight how consistent things are all throughout the book of Acts. They point out that things like preaching the kingdom, water baptism, and miraculous healings didn't stop or change. That policy of going to the Jew first was there from start to finish. For them, this consistency is the proof that there was no major shift in God's program during that time.
So you're probably asking, if the wall was up for that whole time, when in the world did it finally come down? Well, that question brings us to the real climax of this whole argument. According to the book, this wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was a lightning bolt, a sudden, secret revelation given to the Apostle Paul after the events of Acts had already wrapped up while he was in prison. He even uses a specific Greek word, nouni, which basically means just now, like, hey, listen up, this is brand new information nobody's heard before.
This new period is called the secret administration, and that word secret is absolutely key. The authors argue this new plan wasn't just unrevealed before, but it was actively concealed in God for ages. You could search all of Scripture before Paul, and you wouldn't find a single hint about it.
And man, when you put these two eras side by side, the difference is night and day. When the wall was up, Jewish people had priority. The Mosaic law was in effect, and you expected to see signs and wonders. Non-Jews were, as the source puts it, basically guests at Israel's table. But once the wall is down, all of that changes. The distinctions are gone, the law is nullified, and both groups are made into something totally new, the one new man.
Okay, so this is all pretty interesting theory, but what does it actually mean for people today, living in what the book calls the now? This is where the rubber really meets the road. Citing a specific translation of a verse, the book argues that with the arrival of this new, mature revelation, the things that were part of the previous installment, the time past, are now set aside, or, to use their word, discarded. And this is where the practical implications get really clear. The list of practices the book says are discarded is huge,
And it includes many things that are staples in churches today: water baptism, the Lord's Supper, miraculous signs, and even specific church offices. According to this framework, these were all tied to the time when the wall was up, not our current era.
So if all that stuff is gone, what's left? Well, the book argues that instead of those rituals, believers today are simply complete in Him. They live in what's called an administration of grace, where the focus is no longer on laws and physical practices, but on a direct relationship with God, made possible only because that dividing wall is gone. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? Well, the book presents the barrier wall as more than just theology. It's meant to be a practical tool, a whole new lens for reading all of Scripture. It really just boils down to a simple three-step process. First, figure out where the passage you're reading fits on that timeline. Second, ask that key question: is the wall up or down? And third, interpret what you're reading based on the rules for that era, not our own.
Ultimately, whether you agree with the conclusions or not, the barrier wall framework presents a really fascinating challenge. It makes you ask, how can a single metaphor, a wall going up and coming down, radically change the way we read a book that has shaped the world for thousands of years? It's a powerful question to think about.